Hello, Daniel here. Thank you for joining. I appreciate you. In this video, I want to share with you how I go about creating clean lines. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment down below. I'll assist you in the best possible direction. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell for me. I'll be bringing more videos like this for you. I am not ashamed to say that when I first started tattooing, it took me a very long time to understand and grasp the concept of lining. Within this video, I want to share with you some tips and tricks that I go about using when it comes to creating clean, solid, consistent, saturated lines. If you have any questions, drop a comment down below. I'll do my best to assist you in the best possible direction. These lines right here are the results that we get when we aren't familiar with lining basics. Allow me to explain a little bit more. So this line right here, for example, you can see it has a sort of faded appearance. I wouldn't be able to tell if this was a fresh tattoo or an old tattoo if this was on human skin. This right here is a direct result of moving way too fast. I didn't give the needle enough time to make its rounds to create any sort of solid, saturated consistency. So this first line right here is a direct result of moving too fast. This line right here is a direct result of not having enough ink flow to make it from point A to B. Although I started strong, you can see right here, didn't matter how good my application was, didn't matter how stable and consistent I was, I still didn't get a solid or consistent line just because there wasn't enough ink to go around to be deposited in the same manner that I was depositing over here. So this second line right here is a direct result with inadequate ink flow. This middle line right here is a direct result of bad angle. So when I created this line right here, I was leaning my machine far to the right, which was only capturing the right side of my needle. So you can see that it's really raky, it has a lot of streaks, and the majority of the right side of this needle was captured and not the left. The left was actually really faint and faded. So this third line right here is a direct result of inadequate needle angle. This fourth line right here is a direct result of not going deep enough. Although I did have good adequate ink flow, my needle angle was correct, I did have the right posture, position, and everything was aligned. I just didn't go deep enough for this line right here, and as you can see, it has a sort of raky, streaky, faded appearance to it, which is also what we do not want. Just a little bit more deeper than I would have been able to get consistency the way that I'm looking for. So this fourth one right here is a direct result of not going deep enough. This last line right here is a direct result of not having good posture or position before I commit to the line. As you can see, I kind of just went straight into this line and I did a major wobble there because my posture, my position was not comfortable. Maybe the direction that I was moving in, I wasn't comfortable with that direction, or the posture that I was using to create this line, it wasn't good for me, which ended up in this adversity right here, which made me wobble. So this last line right here is a direct result from not having my posture, my position, my comfortability settled before committing to that line. It's important to note that the smaller needle configuration that we use, the more mistakes will show. So for example, if we're using a 3-round liner and we're trying to pull clean lines, every little wobble, every little inconsistency with needle depth, all of that is going to show up. If we're using, let's say for example, like this needle, an 11-round shader, then we're more prone to getting away with some mistakes. Let's say if we do wobble, then it's not going to be as prominent as it would with a smaller needle configuration. This is an 11-round shader from Drago Art, a frontage tattoo needle. This is going to be the Frequency Master tattoo machine from OG Produce. I'll be using dynamic black along with true skin here and petroleum jelly to demonstrate my points here. When it comes to creating clean lines, there are multiple moving components for me that I'm considering. So for example, I'm going to identify my point A and B, basically where I'm going to be starting and ending, so that way I kind of have a play and know what I'm going to be doing. Once I identify my point A and B, I'm going to get comfortable and I'm going to make sure that my posture and my position is comfortable enough for me to commit to that line before I commit to it. Along with my posture, my position, I'm also going to make sure that I have the correct needle angle, so that way I get the correct needle integrity captured for the correct line weight that I am looking for. I'm also going to want to match my hand speed to my voltage, and I'm going to pay attention to needle depth to make sure that I'm not going to blow out or have my ink fall out and have faint looking lines. Another very important variable is the ink flow. I always want to make sure that I have adequate ink flow, so that way I can commit to the line and apply it with the line weight integrity that I am going for. So I know that that may be a lot, but I'm going to explain it throughout this video here, so hopefully by the end of this video it kind of sears in your brain. There are multiple moving components that go into creating clean lines. So I'm going to identify my point A and B. I'm going to make sure that I'm comfortable, so I'm going to fix my posture, my position. I want to make sure that I have a good needle angle. I have adequate ink flow. I'm going to commit to the first line, and then I'm going to align my hand speed to my voltage, ensuring that my needle angle is correct. I'm going to taper in slightly and then a slight taper out so I don't have any like bulb ends here. Everything looks nice and clean. And I'm going to go ahead and dab. I was also mindful of my needle depth, as I do not want to blow out the skin. As you can see, it's what we would want to stay away from. And that's the ideology behind it. So when I create lines, I have to have these components working together. Even if one of them is off, then it's not going to come out the way that I desire. If I move fast, let's say if I'm going to kind of misalign my hand speed to my voltage, but everything else is going to be the same. I'm going to identify A to B right here, or as far as I can get. My posture, my position is comfortable, my needle angle is correct. I'm going to go ahead and try to stick to the same needle depth, just while moving a lot more faster. So as you can see, I sped that up a lot. Although it may appear saturated at first glance, if I zoom in and we compare it, these are not nearly the same. This one has a far more faded appearance to it. These really are night and day. The only reason why this one even looks somewhat saturated is because the stencil was already dark to begin with. However, I assure you this one is much more lighter than this one right here. So I'm going to align my hand speed to my voltage and everything else. I've identified point A and B. I'm going to go ahead and make sure my posture, my position is comfortable before I commit. And then I'm going to taper in right here, aligning my hand speed to my voltage, making sure that I stay at a consistent needle depth throughout this entire application here. If I slow down, I can cause trauma and damage to the skin, scarring, raising of the skin, that kind of thing. If I speed up, you're gonna get the same results that I got a little while ago, where it's really faint lines. We could probably also cause trauma to the skin that way, which we don't want. But you can see that this is much more prominent. This is much more pronounced. Not only that, I captured the line weight integrity of the 11 round shader that I am using. So all of that checks off, and this is actually a really clean line. So over here, I'm going to repeat that. Identify A and B. Make sure my posture and position is comfortable. I'm going to pay attention to my needle angle, commit, taper in, align my hand speed to my voltage, taper out, and I was real mindful of my needle depth as well. And you're going to hear, if you pay attention to the audio, you're going to hear it's almost the same in terms of pressure being applied to the machine. These are the moving components that I am talking about. It's the exact same thing over and over and over. The only thing that changes is maybe the direction that we're moving, how we go about positioning ourselves, that sort of thing. In terms of the actual technical application, that is going to remain the same. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this. I've identified my point A. This is my point B. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get comfortable. I'm going to make sure I have a good needle angle going here. I do have adequate ink flow as well, and I haven't been mentioning that, but I do have adequate ink flow, as you can see right there. Not too much, not too little. I'm going to go ahead and taper in, commit while keeping a healthy angle and a good hand speed to voltage. I'm going to taper right out the end. I made sure that I kept that same consistency with my hand speed to voltage. I made sure that I did have my needle depth as consistent as I can keep it. And again, for the needle depth, you really have to pay attention to that audio. And if you hear any sort of pressure fluctuations, then you know I'm pressing down harder or applying more pressure in certain areas. And that's not the case here. For these first 4 lines, they're neighboring one another well. All of them have the exact same line weight integrity. I don't feel like the skin is damaged, and all of them they're very powerful looking, so to speak, and that is exactly what I'm going for. So this is exactly the way that I'm going to go ahead and continue this entire process. And I essentially apply this logic to every single needle configuration that I'm using. I just adjust depending on the needle size. So if I'm using a 3-round liner, I'll typically tend to take my voltage down to around 5, maybe move a little bit slower or faster depending on the location that I'm tattooing. Same thing, so I'm going to identify my point A to B. I'm going to make sure my posture and my position is comfortable. I have adequate ink flow. My needle angle is good as well. I'm going to commit to the line by tapering in slightly right here, so that way I don't have any round bold points. I'm going to align my hand speed to my voltage while paying attention to needle depth here. And in terms of voltage, everyone is going to vary. I don't really feel like anyone uses the exact same voltage. It's really going to be determined on how you go about applying your tattoos, meaning if you want a faster approach, slower approach. I really don't think that we should strive for being quick. What we should strive for is applying results consistently each and every time that we want on demand. Right now, I'm running at 7 volts even. So I can pick it up to 8 volts if I like, but I'm gonna stick with 7 because it allows me to move a little bit more slower, which minimizes the mistakes that I may make along the way. So the same thing, I'm going to go back for some more ink, make sure that I have adequate ink flow, and I'm just dipping the very tip of the needle in while I do that. I'm going to identify my point A to B, make sure my posture and position is comfortable. Before I commit to the line, I'm going to taper in. I'm going to pay attention to my needle angle while aligning my hand speed to my voltage, paying attention to my needle depth as well. I'm going to go ahead and dab this away, and you can see that that entire line as well came out true to the integrity that I'm using here. The last thing that we want is line weight fluctuations. Each and every line that we create should be neighboring one another well, meaning they shouldn't really fluctuate in size at all. I'm gonna go ahead and repeat. I made sure that I have adequate ink flow. There's a little too much, as you can see. I'm gonna identify point A to B, make sure my posture and my position is comfortable. I'm going to taper in, align my hand speed to my voltage while keeping an eye on my needle angle along with my needle depth. And this is very important that I say this over and over because I really want you to understand that all of these variables have to be aligned. I prefer to take my time with my designs, so I would run at 7 volts, so that way, again, I can really ease into my lines and not have to rush any part of it. So I'm going to approach it the same way, identify point A to B, and then I'm just going to kind of commit to the line the same way that I would, but while not having a consistent needle depth. So one thing that I'm noticing off the bat is that it's much more fainter, and it's not as heavy and powerful as the other lines here next to it. Allow me to wipe. You can see it actually has a sort of faded look to it, and I'm not sure if it really does justice on camera, but it has a sort of faded look, and that's just simply touching the surface level of the skin. I didn't really go deep enough, and I didn't give the needle enough time to make its rounds accurately the way I feel it should. Let's try this again here and do it correctly. So if I identify my point A and B, posture, position, ink flow, I'm going to taper in right here, commit to the line, paying attention to my needle angle, aligning my hand speed to my voltage, and also being very mindful of the needle depth, that I stay at the consistent needle depth all the way through until I'm done with the taper out like so. I'm going to go ahead and dab this away, and you can see how now this line is very prominent and powerful, fully consistent, solid, clean, and saturated, exactly what I'm going for. I'm going to go ahead and do this again over here. Identify point A and B, make sure that I have adequate ink flow, posture, position comfortable before I commit, taper into the line, focusing on my needle angle, aligning my hand speed to my voltage, and keeping a consistent needle depth. If I rush, then I'm going to get inconsistencies with my lines. If I don't keep that depth the same, then I'm also going to get inconsistencies. So you can kind of see by now it's starting to make sense as to why these variables all have to be working together in order for us to produce any sort of clean, solid, consistent results. Let's try this again here. So I have adequate ink flow, identify my point A and B, and then from here I'm going to make sure my posture and my position is comfortable. So you can see I'm kind of adjusting that. I'm going to commit here now. I'm going to taper in, make sure that my angle is correct. I align my hand speed to my voltage, make sure that I keep a consistent needle depth, and then just keep an eye on where I'm going. I want to make sure that the ink is flowing all the way through so that way I can really capture that 11 round shader. And I'm going to taper out at the end like so. I'm going to go ahead and dab away, and this entire line should come out identically the same in terms of needle weight integrity. I'm going back for some more ink. I'm going to repeat this again. Identify point A and B. Posture and position, adjust that. Make sure I commit while adjusting my angle, or paying attention to my angle, adjusting my hand speed to my voltage, and paying attention to the depth of my needle. With the taper out right there. Those tapers are really important as well. All of these steps are going to begin to add up, and this is essentially what we want to look for. So identify point A and B. I want to make sure that I have adequate ink flow. I'm going to commit to the line here, paying attention to my angle, aligning my hand speed to my voltage, keeping a consistent needle depth all the way through. And then I'm going to reach the end and taper out like so. I'm going to dab away, and you can see that I'm getting clean, powerful, solid looking lines. Let's go ahead and do these two, and you're going to see that's going to be, again, the exact same thing. So identify point A and B, adequate ink flow, taper in, commit, align hand speed to voltage, making sure that I have the right needle angle, correct needle depth along the way, and then I'm going to taper out. So adequate ink flow, identify A and B, posture position. I'm going to taper in right here, aligning my hand speed to my voltage, keeping an eye on my needle angle as well as my needle depth, and then I'm going to taper out at the end. Now in terms of needle angle, you can see that I'm kind of holding it upright, so that way the needle strikes all together, so that way all 11 needles are striking at once, and that's how I capture that line weight integrity. So it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to identify my point A and B. I'm going to make sure that my posture is comfortable in my position, have adequate ink flow. I'm going to commit to the line, focus on my needle angle, align my hand speed to my voltage, keep a consistent needle depth, I did do a slight taper in as well. When I reach the end, I'm going to taper out. Just like that. I'm going to dab away to show you the line weight integrity. Put some ointment so that way you can see that I did capture the line weight integrity true to what I am using here. As I've mentioned, it's going to be the same for every single needle configuration. This is a Drago Art Fudge 3-round liner. I'm going to be running at 5 volts. I'm lowering it down just because this needle is easier to open up the skin. And then I'm going to show you with these little details right here to be the exact same thing. Identify my point A to B. Make sure my posture, my position is comfortable before I commit. Taper in right here. Align my hand speed to my voltage. Keep a good healthy needle angle along with a consistent needle depth. And then I'm going to bring it this way. I'm running at a very low voltage, so therefore I move a little bit slower. I personally like to move a little bit slower to minimize any mistakes that I could potentially make. Every artist is different, but you can see that it's going to be the same. I make sure that I have adequate ink flow, so I'm going back for more ink. Keep identifying point A to B every step of the way. Posture position before I commit. Make sure I have to be comfortable. Align my hand speed to my voltage. Pay really close attention to that needle angle along with that needle depth. And repeat over and over and over again. This is definitely a practice and something that took me a very long time to kind of get comfortable with. Until today, I'm still learning how to master it. I have not nearly mastered lining the way that I would like. I'm going to repeat, so I want to make sure that I'm comfortable. So if I have to adjust myself, I'm going to readjust, making sure that my posture, my position's comfortable. Make sure that I have adequate ink flow. Identify point A and B. Get comfortable before I commit to the line. Here's my A point. I'll align my hand speed to my voltage. Taper in, taper out, making sure that I have good needle angle along with good needle depth each and every step of the way. And then once you start getting used to paying attention to these variables, you're gonna see how quickly they kind of come in back to back and one another, and how they really do have to be there in order for us to produce cleaner, saturated results, or just cleaner results in general. I had adequate ink flow. I went back for more ink, adjust my comfortability, posture, position, A and B right here. I'm going to pay attention to my needle angle along with my needle depth while aligning my hand speed to my voltage. And I know I've said that many times throughout this video, but that is exactly the point of this video, is to get that across here. So hopefully by the end of it, you know exactly what to look for now. As you can see, then once you start getting into a groove, this is going to start becoming a little bit more like clockwork. You're still going to have a steady workflow, but you're not necessarily going to be as nervous maybe as you are now, and you'll have a plan of approach every step of the way. For those that really want to learn, I feel like I could repeat this a few more times, and then I assure you I'll close out the video there. But my goal is to relay this information so that way by the end of the video you'll have that down here. So here we go again. I'm going to identify my point A and B. I do have adequate ink flow. Make sure my posture, my position is comfortable. As you're going to notice, it did change a little bit here, which is completely fine. I'm still comfortable. I'm going to taper in, commit to my line, paying attention to my needle depth, my needle angle, aligning my hand speed to my voltage. This all has to happen simultaneously. Here we go. Tapering in and out each and every line that I create, just to avoid any harsh starting and end points. I don't want that. I want them to look clean. I'm going back for more ink to keep that consistent ink flow going, so that way each line that I create is true to the line that I'm trying to make there. I need that integrity to really shine through. So I'm adjusting to make sure that my comfortability, posture, and position is comfortable for the lines that I'm going to create. I'm going to moisturize the area, align my position here. I'm going to identify A to B, commit to the line, being mindful of my needle angle along with my needle depth, aligning my hand speed to my voltage. And then we're going to repeat, tapered in and out there, taper in, taper out. Focus on needle angle along with needle depth, aligning my hand speed to my voltage, keeping it the same, and a taper out. And I'm kind of just repeating what I'm doing here real time, or just saying what I'm doing real time out loud. So another taper in, as you can see, aligning hand speed to my voltage, keeping an eye on my needle depth and needle angle, coming to the end and tapering out right there. I'm going to repeat that 2 more times, and it is a wrap. Tapering in and out. Tapering in, hand speed to voltage, needle angle, needle depth, and taper out right there after I've identified A to B, posture, position, taper in. There we go, and I had enough adequate ink flow for that last little line just because it was so tiny I didn't have to go back for more, so you have to weigh that out as you were tattooing. That right there, though, I feel does get the points across, because this is essentially going to be repeated over and over and over, and I could have this go on for hours, but I don't feel like it's necessary, as I do feel like you can kind of watch this over and over again if you need to. Start from the top, start from the beginning, and then rewatch it again, and I assure you, if you watch it a few times, it may really stick with you. Now, although it's not complete, I would just simply repeat this process until it is. As you can see, everything is coming out very consistent, neighboring one another well. I don't see any line weight fluctuations besides the ones that are intentional. Now, I do hope that this gets the points across. I do hope that you can take something from this video and immediately apply it to your tattooing workflow. If you have any questions about anything that you heard throughout this video, I encourage you to drop a comment down below, and I'll do my best to assist in the best possible direction. Before you go, please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell for me, as I'm going to be bringing more videos like this for you. With that being said, I appreciate you, your time, and your support. Thank you very much. You have a good day.